So, what are some examples of Hitler's brinkmanship? One of the first things that he's going to do is start building offensive weapons. He's going to build submarines, tanks, and airplanes. And I give you the German name for all these things, the Nava, I guess, I got nothing, the Wehrmacht, and the Luftwaffe, which is certainly the most important. He's going to be a huge pioneer in aviation, especially used for warfare, and it's really the Luftwaffe that almost conquers all of Europe. After that, he's going to go ahead and reintroduce conscription, remembering that conscription is a fancy way of saying the military draft. Within 2 years, he is going to have enlisted 500,000 troops. So, of course, I slightly exaggerated or I downplayed in the last video, with the numbers of saying just 1,000, but I was just trying to prove a point. Then, like I said, he's going to move them into the Rhineland very slowly, bit by bit. This does scare France, and at this point, France is going to start preparing a little bit for the possibility of an attack, but we'll talk about that in a second. The next thing that's really significant is the Anschluss, which is a German word that means connection. This happens in 1938, and what it is a peaceful connection between Germany and Austria. Basically, he offers Austria protection to be a part of the Germanic Empire, and the two countries merge and become one. This is actually referenced in the hit musical The Sound of Music, starring Julie Andrews. I don't know why I plugged that, just go with it. And then the next thing is going to be his quest to conquer the Sudetenland. Now this is going to be a time where Hitler meets with resistance. The Anschluss is really easy. Hey Austria, want to be a part of me? Sure! I mean, it's just as simple as that, only probably like some paperwork and stuff. But with the Sudetenland, this is a little region of Czechoslovakia that spoke German, so this is him trying to, reclaim the borders, unite the German-speaking peoples, but the problem is that Czechoslovakia had just got its independence with the Treaty of Versailles. So 20 years earlier, this is a brand new country that was birthed out of this paperwork that ended World War I. These people were not willing to turn over their independence that they had just got. This is a map, I'm thinking in Polish, but I got nothing, that shows you this is approximately where the Sudetenland is, this weird pinkish color. It's just that little border between Germany and Poland, and as part of Czechoslovakia. So gaining this would gain Hitler a lot of access to all of these different countries. So Germany turns to Czechoslovakia, and they're like, hey look, you're a brand new country, you got some really prime location, why don't you join us, we can keep you safe. And so Hitler tried to get Czechoslovakia to just cede the Sudetenland, and cede just means to give up, just give it over. And Sudetenland, they're sitting there kind of stuck in the middle. They're like, well, we do speak German, but we kind of like this whole independence thing. And Czechoslovakia, so there's like 3 people involved here, Czechoslovakia is all like, heck no, that's my country. And so the two countries ultimately couldn't reach an agreement, and they decide, let's sit down and chat about it. So at least they're not going straight on to war. That's a plus. And so they're going to meet at what's called the Munich Conference, and this is in March of 1938. They needed a mediator, so somebody who was supposed to be neutral, to come and make a determination. And so the mediator was the British Prime Minister of the time, a guy by the name of Neville Chamberlain. Bearing in mind, he really shouldn't have been considered neutral, seeing how his country was one of the big 4 who created the Treaty of Versailles that gave the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia, its independence. Nonetheless, Chamberlain, this fancy-looking dude right here, is going to serve as the mediator between Germany and Czechoslovakia. And what's his decision? He ultimately says, this is his quote, "This is just a quarrel in a faraway country of whom we," meaning Britain, "know nothing." So he recognized that this was some sort of nationalistic debate that the English were relatively unaware of. That being said, he felt, this Hitler dude, he's got some valid arguments, and we're kind of a little scared of him, so let's just do whatever it takes to make him happy. He's kind of breaking a lot of the Treaty of Versailles. Maybe if we give him the Sudetenland, he'll knock it off, and the rest of the Treaty of Versailles will stand. This is called appeasement. It sounds like please, to do whatever necessary or whatever steps it takes to make someone happy. So Chamberlain, he appeases Hitler and says, yep, you can go ahead and have the Sudetenland. And this makes Chamberlain promise peace in our time. He says, this is going to be the point at which we're never going to have wars again. And Hitler, for his part, says, this is the last territorial claim that I have to make in Europe. In other words, Hitler says, at this point, he's not going after any more land. Raise your hands if you believe Adolf Hitler. Good, hopefully you kept your hands down, because let's be serious. If Adolf Hitler didn't want any more land, there wouldn't have been World War II. So clearly he wants land. What land does he want? Well, he wants Poland. That's his biggest one, right? It has great access to the sea for trade route. It also was partially created from land that Hitler had to give up. It was also partially created by land that Russia had to give up. So Hitler realizes that if he goes after too much of Poland, he might aggravate Russia. So, in order to avoid this, he's going to negotiate what's called the Non-Aggression Pact with the Soviet Union, or Russia, as we said, communist Russia. So he and the leader there, a dude by the name of Joseph Stalin, are basically going to form this super secret alliance, even though we're not forming entangling alliances anymore. We just did. And the whole friendship is, we agree that we are going to work together to get our respective parts of Poland back. Now, the particular part of Poland that Hitler wanted back was known as the Polish Corridor. It was just his strip of land that, in his head, was his, that had been taken from Germany during the Treaty of Versailles. And Russia, like I said, they had lost land, so the two of them are going to work together. They try, again, diplomatic means, various efforts. They're still keeping their friendship on the down low at this point for a little bit. But Hitler, he's going to turn to Poland and say, why don't you join us? You're a new country. You're next to that big, bad, scary Russia place. You should probably just join us and we'll keep you safe. Russia's trying the same thing from their side. Poland's not falling for it, right? Poland's in here like, no, we like our independence. We've been fighting for that for, a couple hundred years, so we're not really going to give it up now. And this is really the point at which brinkmanship has met its end. Britain and France, they were scared that Germany had really started to go too far. And he had just sat here and lied. He told Chamberlain he didn't want any more land, and here he is, a few months later, going after more land. So makes particularly Britain, but also slightly France, look really, really weak. And so they do start considering going to war. And they start mobilizing Britain and France. They start conscripting men into the military and building some new weapons. So they're slowly preparing for the possibility. They actually get to the point where they tell Germany that if Polish territorial integrity is violated, they will go to war. So they're telling Germany, you got to back down. If you go anywhere near Poland, we are going to attack you. At this point, Germany doesn't care. And Hitler steps up. And he invades Poland on September 1st, 1939. Huge date, possibly evidenced by the plethora of exclamation points after the date, and it's underlined and in blue and caps. This is considered the start date of the war. And really, this is one of those dates that you really just need to know. September 1st, 1939, World War II starts when Germany invades Poland. Hitler decides that this time he's going to use a different style of fighting than what had been used in the past. In World War I, we had that whole invade, sit in trench, sit there for a while, oh, it's a holiday, let's not fight each other, oh, and now we're going to run out of the hole in the ground and then run back. He was not down with this. So instead, he's going to do the exact opposite. He's going to engage in a style of fighting called the Blitzkrieg, like the Blitz, where it's lightning warfare. Go as fast, throw as much as you possibly can, go in, toss it down, destroy it, and get out. That way there's not going to be this stalemate like World War I. So Hitler, from his side, is going to come into Poland. Russia is going to join in from their side a couple weeks later. The Russians are actually more brutal than the Germans, ironically. The Russians are going to actually wind up executing thousands of prisoners of war. Lots of people try to flee from Germany's invasion, and they head towards Russia. There's the Russian army catching them by surprise in what's called the Caton Forest, and the Russians wind up slaughtering them. The British and the French, they were completely appalled. They said they were going to get involved. So here they are. They start mobilizing, but they're so slow. You've got to remember, Poland is sandwiched between Germany and Russia. And so by the time Britain and France can get there, Germany and Russia have already conquered Poland on September 28th, 1939. The Polish people, they tried to fight back, but they were just completely caught unawares. They were not prepared, and they didn't even have enough food, right? The Great Depression hit everybody, and this is a brand new country. And so, I mean, at one point, one of these, again, random stories of the war, the Polish people started eating horse meat. So after this initial push where Germany and Russia team up and take over Poland and Britain and France are like, oh my goodness, what happened, right? We enter this time period in the war called the Sitzkrieg. So the Blitzkrieg is go fast, hit hard, right? Sitzkrieg is kind of like what its name says, sit still. It's not a stalemate, it's literally taking like a time out so everybody in Europe can kind of regroup and pick their sides. And so we have this little lull, if you will, where everybody kind of figures out, okay, what's going to happen. Even Hitler had to kind of game plan a little bit, because at this point, he got everything he was after. So he's like, well, that was pretty easy. Who should I go after next? So, by spring of 1940, he has made up his mind of a new game plan. He's still going to work with Russia. They're going to be allies for a while here. And they're going to attack Scandinavia. Scandinavia, for trade purposes, en masse. It's a lot of land. Scandinavia is just what we call the collection of Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and then sometimes people count Iceland, and they're kind of in the war, but we're not going to focus too much on Iceland because they don't do too much. It's actually where my grandpa fought, though, so if you're actually curious, let me know. Anyways, in terms of Scandinavia, Denmark's actually geographically connected to Germany, so it makes sense to conquer them, and it doesn't take too much. And then he turns his sights to those countries immediately to his north that are connected with Russia as well. At first, he's going to use a lot of propaganda. He's going to try to convince these countries, hey, I'm actually a nice guy. You're kind of a weaker country in Europe at this point. I mean, Scandinavia had kind of seen better days. So he tries to say, just join us. Do all this Anschluss. Just join us peacefully, and that'll be it. Meanwhile, ally of Russia, Stalin, okay, is in charge of Russia, they're going to attack. So you've got Stalin using force, Hitler using propaganda, and these two are trying to take over Scandinavia, and Britain's going to get mad. Why? Because if you look at this map here, you got Norway, Sweden, Finland. This gray is Russia, so you can see it's connected to Finland and Scandinavia, so it's easy to march through these countries. This guy down here kind of looks like a left-handed mitten. That's Denmark, and Germany's right beneath it. And you got the sea, and then right here would be Britain. And so if Hitler is able to take over all these countries, there's nothing standing between Germany and Britain anymore other than some water. So Britain's going to wind up putting like landmines, but they're in the water, so water mines, around Norway in order to try to protect them. They really wanted to protect Norway so that Germany couldn't send its navy, or therefore its army also, and use any type of force. Hitler's going to use propaganda to say, this is Britain being mean to you, Norway. They're hurting your trade. Norway is predominantly a fishing country. And so Hitler's going to sit here and try to spin this whole story that Britain is the bad guy, when really Britain was trying to help out. Finland's going to get conquered really fast by the Russians. Sweden and Denmark, they're going to try to hold out, but ultimately they're going to capitulate, which means to give in. They're going to surrender. Norway is going to fight back the hardest, but all four are going to ultimately wind up getting conquered by the German-Soviet alliance. Throughout the rest of the war, Norway in particular is going to continue to fight for its independence, but is never going to be successful. It is important to note that Hitler did lose some destroyers and cruisers in this attack, but really by April of 1940, he has now conquered Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So he's conquered around 7 countries and formed an alliance with the biggest country in the world. So he's moving pretty fast, and now he's got access to the sea and a direct path to Britain.